If you find the foam is wet, don't surf the board anymore. When a board breaks in two pieces and we put it back together, it will not feel the same because the consistency of flex in the foam is broken. Will it be strong enough to surf? Yeah, for years, without a doubt. So it's very tough to stay in shape, especially in the wintertime when it's cold. We have flat spells here. It's of utmost importance because when you get out there and you're gassed and the waves are really good, the paddle trainer, a lot of us understand that this is something that has been needed for a long time.
Do you struggle with your paddle power? Well, I can go months without surfing and roll to pumping waves and surf 3-hour sessions multiple times a day, day after day after day by using the Basis paddle trainer. It was a total game changer for me, and it can be for you too. These things actually work, unlike elastic resistance bands. You can train your paddling anytime, anywhere, so you can catch more waves and have more fun. Just 10 to 20 minutes a couple times a week, and you're gonna be in insane paddle shape. Right? So remember, the key progression is more waves, and the key to more waves is more paddle power. Check it out at surfbasis.com. You're going to be stoked.
All right, welcome to the Basis Surf Podcast. Very excited because this time we got Paul Godette. He's a surfer from Rockaway Beach right outside of New York City, born and raised. He's a surfboard craftsman, famous for ding repairs. His ding repair stuff goes viral like crazy, actually. It's pretty interesting. And he's actually shaped a board or two. Getting into that, but he's a skater, surfer, all the good stuff. And so wanted to chat with a local from Rockaway, get his perspective on things, learn a little bit about ding repair, because I know this is something all surfers have to deal with. So I got a ton of questions for you on ding repair. Also questions on surfing Rockaway, or if you surf like a, kind of a inconsistent beach break. Your perspective on fins, surfboards. And so we got a ton of questions for you. But first of all, thanks for joining, Paul.
For sure, for sure. Thanks for having me. Stoked to be on here. I love the Surf Basis community, and all the content that comes out of there is really good. So you guys are doing great work too.
Cool. All right, man. Why don't we just kind of start actually from the beginning? Just tell us a little bit about your story. How'd you get to where you are today, doing the ding repair and riding boards and having fun?
For sure. So yeah, it's all fun. I mean, where am I today? Where am I right now? I'm at Marina 59. I'm in the Laurel Bay headquarters, and I work in Marina 59 doing ding repair. So I have a little shipping container, and my bread and butter is repairing surfboards. That's what I do. I started surfing around 20 years old, and I also started working at Station Surf Shop, which was a surf shop located in Rockaway. I was doing retail while also learning to surf. The owner, I started getting tips from him. That was Nigel Lewis, and learning how to do ding repair. And then eventually I started learning from my mentor, Adrian Howard, who's from Barbados. He's an expert in ding repair. He's the main ding repair and fiberglass person on the island of Barbados. So I learned a lot of my more advanced skills from him, and now I'm running my own little studio. So yeah, that's how I got to where I have been repairing boards, for sure.
Nice. Well, why don't we start off with the ding repair stuff, right? So I guess the first big question, because everybody, me especially, has dinged their surfboard, right? And then there's just this question that you always have is should I try to fix it myself, or should I bring it in to get it fixed? I mean, what's your opinion on that? I mean, obviously it's it's interesting because you teach people how to repair their own boards, but then that's also your business. So what's your perspective on it?
That is funny, right? I would say yes, you should absolutely try to repair it yourself, because then you'll gain a respect for the craft itself and what it takes to get a proper finish, what it takes to get a board properly watertight, working with the materials and things like that. Because it's not easy. And once you start sanding with your hand, you're like, whew, I'm getting tired. And then you're like, oh man, I need someone who has a machine. I need a sander machine, because then you realize that sanding is no joke.
But what
Yeah.
doesn't that seem to suggest that I shouldn't repair my own board? I guess it's a question of how much effort and energy you have, versus how
Yeah.
much time you have, right? I guess that's
Pretty
what it
much,
is.
pretty much, because if you have time and you're willing to learn, it's absolutely something I think every surfer should know how to do a little bit of ding
Mm.
repair, even if it's like a small puncture on the board. Something like that doesn't take long to repair. You just have to make sure you do it properly.
Yeah. Well, I guess part of it is it feels so daunting, right? You just look at it and you're like, oh man, I got to get fiberglass. I got to get all these tools. But is it hard to learn, or is it just like in our heads, like, you just look at it and you're like, man, that just seems complicated? Or is it actually, is it something that's relatively straightforward to learn? You just got to put a little bit of time into it.
A little bit of both, right? Because it takes time to learn how to do it properly.
Yeah.
And it's also in your or our heads, right? Because one of the things a lot of people don't know about repairing surfboards is you need to make the damage a lot worse before you make it better. So
Mm.
one thing I don't really talk about too much in the videos is like the level of you really need to understand layers when you're doing ding repair, because we have foam, then we have fiberglass, then we have our hot coat, and the construction of the board, whoever built the board puts the paint somewhere in between those layers. So when you understand that, if you ding your board, right, if you have fiberglass and you have foam and you ding your board, you can't just put resin on top of it. You have to sand into the board before putting your fiberglass back on to bring it back to a level surface. So,
Okay.
one thing that's really daunting about folks that come and they want to repair their own board is that they're scared of doing more harm, and making the damage worse.
Got it. Well, so actually, okay, that's super interesting. I'm going to come back to that because you bring up a really good point when I've tried to, like apply temporary fixes to my boards. But like, let's back up even more, right? Like,
Okay.
let's say I ding my board. Like, what do you think about just like properly getting a ding repair? Like, what you're talking about is like a proper ding repair versus
Yeah.
some of the more temporary fixes, like just using Solarez or ding putty or
Or wax or tape.
like wax or tape. And Joey Falcone, he has the ding zap, that film. Like, what do you think about all of those? Like,
Yeah.
what do you think about that? Like, a lot of people are like, oh, I'll just do this, right? Well, is there any problem with that? Or what? Break down, in your opinion, as a professional ding repair guy, like, are those good substitutes? Like, maybe they're temporary. Kind of, what is your perspective on those
Right.
guys?
Okay. So they're all different, and we could go one by one. We could go from
Let's go
best.
jankiest, or actually, yeah, let's start off with best to worst. Yeah, let's
Okay,
go
well, yeah,
best
we
to worst.
so we go best to worst. So the best thing you can do for your surfboard, if you got a ding and you're trying to get back in the water, maybe you don't have access to a ding repair guy in that town or whatever.
Right.
The best thing you can do is have a ding repair kit.
Hmm.
And a ding repair kit is a small kit you can usually get at local surf shops that has a piece of sandpaper and it has a tube of resin. And what that'll do is it'll allow you to do a surface level patch that gets the board watertight. It just doesn't allow water in the board. It may not do a super professional job. It may not provide any major structural strength, but it'll prevent water from getting in, and it'll be a resin bond so that it's for sure not going to let water get in.
And is that the one where there's a little bit of cloth you put in it as well, or no cloth?
Well, either one of those, because there is a ding repair kit with cloth, right?
Yeah.
With cloth, and that works. And then there's also the fiber fill too.
Okay.
So either one of those, that's probably the best thing you can do.
And is that different from SunCure, or like a SunCure solution?
So it gets crazy because all of the ding repair kits are different. They have a ding repair kit that's specifically for polyester boards, the standard surfboard construction. There's a ding repair kit for epoxy boards. There's a ding repair kit that has fiberfill in the tube but no cloth. And then there's a kit that has everything. Has cloth, it has the resin, some of them have Q cell, some of them don't. So that's kind of what I find funny about it, is that none of the ding repair kits that I've seen have everything you need. Like,
Okay.
and that could be I don't know, that could be like I don't know, maybe that's like I don't know, it could be like some marketing thing, but none of them have everything.
So
That's what I've noticed.
so I guess, do you put SunCure in the same bucket as like what you're talking about, or is that separate? Is that lower
Yes.
quality? It is the
Yes.
same.
No, no, no. Suncure is a great solution for a
Okay.
temporary fix. Yeah, it'll keep the water out. Granted, it's not like a major thing.
Right. Okay. So like all of this is like what you would consider to be your best solution. So SunCure,
Yes.
or the resin, and then maybe you want to put cloth in, then you can put the cloth in. Okay.
Yeah.
So that's pretty good. All right. What's next? What's below that?
So below that, this is in terms of like the quick fixes, what you got
Yeah.
on
Yeah.
hand at, on your surf trip or whatever. Sometimes stickers or tape, packing tape, some people do use duct tape and they layer it up. And in that same category, I would put those ding repair sheets
Like
Um,
the you mean
the plastic sheets.
the like Joey's Joe Falcone's ding zap stuff?
Ding zap. Yeah, yeah,
Yep,
things
yep,
like that. That I would put in that category of like tape because to me it all looks like tape. I'm really not sure the difference.
yeah. The ding
Um,
zap stuff though is stronger than regular tape because it is going to be waterproof.
mhm,
I will say that I've tried it a little bit, and it can also mold and
mhm,
like fit into place like duct tape. I don't know if it's going to be
mhm.
100% watertight, and then it
Right.
also because it has a structure, like it's not going to get into all the little cracks and whatnot. But it is a temporary.
Mhm.
It is definitely a temporary solution, and I think the way he designed it though is he wanted it to be temporary to the point where it's very easy to remove so then you can get it professionally fixed. So I think that was his intention behind
Well,
that guy.
it works. It works really well because I do see a lot of boards that come in the shop that have the ding zap kind of tape on it,
Yeah.
and it is fairly easy to remove. I either scrape it off or sand through it, and then just get started with work right away.
Yeah.
And I
What's
would
your
say,
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
oh, so I would say in on the list of like worst ways to temporarily fix your board, wax is among the worst. There are worse ways, obviously. You know, if you just leave it open and go surf, or I don't know, stick dirt in it or something. But wax is pretty bad because number one, when you bring it to your repair guy, he has to essentially make the foam worse because you have to get all the wax out. And if you're in a hot place, wax starts melting to the foam. And then when we try to get the wax out, or if you try to laminate over waxy foam, it'll never laminate properly
Mm.
because you have wax that's like liquid and melted onto the foam and different things. So it just makes it a
Oh.
little more intense to try and prep and removing wax and things like that.
Oh, I did not know that. Huh. So I guess this well because my actual follow up question was going to be what about ding putty? You know the epoxy ding putty stuff. Have you
Yeah.
seen that stuff? What where does that fit into all that?
So that's somewhere between putting in ding tape and putting in wax. It's okay temporarily, but it's not a permanent solution. Those I wouldn't leave those without proper repair for more than like 3 or 4 sessions, maybe less, because the putty essentially is a what we use it as or what it's supposed to be used as is filler, right? So if you have like a giant hole in the board and then you need to quickly repair it, you can use it as filler. However, it's still one hard, it dries solid, so if your board flexes it can cause cracks in between the foam and the filler and still let water in. Even if we have filler in it, you always need glass. Like that's the thing, proper fiberglass work is the only thing that's going to truly get a board watertight.
Interesting, because that's what I've always been a fan of. Because like the ding putty here's kind of like my old philosophy, but talking to you has definitely been a light bulb moment and kind of changed my perspective on things, right? Because I was always like, I used to use sun cure, but sometimes you don't have the sun, so you can't get it cured, right?
That's
It's
true.
like you ding your board at like a sunset session, and then you have a ding, and then you're gonna go out first light, and then
Oh
it's
yeah,
cloudy, you can't ride the board, so you're like screwed, right? And that's your
yeah,
favorite board, that's the board that you need to ride. So I'm like, okay, so sometimes sun cure is not going to work, or because you don't even have sun. Sometimes I've even gotten I've had the sun, I apply it and it just doesn't ever cure even though I left it for hours under the sun because it's like an old tube or whatever like that. So I
right,
was like, I don't like this stuff. So obviously I know that using tape is a very temporary thing. So I'm like, that's not going to do it. So that's why I use the ding putty. And the ding putty is super moldable. It can get in anywhere. And I thought it would be a watertight bond, but from what you're telling me like, no, there's like these micro cracks between like the hard thing. And then cause it's not flexing.
right. Now
Oh,
it can keep water like I'm it can keep water out temporarily,
right.
but I just don't recommend using that putty and then
Yeah.
surfing the board for the duration of the season or like continuously surfing. Like yeah, use it
Right.
and
Right.
go out a couple times, maybe till the end of the swell. Use it,
Yeah.
but get the board repaired properly or do a proper job on it because it's not a permanent solution. Yeah,
Yeah.
so no,
Cause that's
I'm not. It works. It does work. If that's your question, it
right.
works. Yeah.
Right. But that's really interesting because that's the thing though is when you apply it in certain situations, it doesn't really stick and it can fall off. And I'm thinking
Yeah,
like maybe it's not the best. And so I've actually kind of gone back to sun cure.
yeah.
But anyway, so like, yeah,
That's the
that's really
thing.
interesting.
There's
Hmm.
so many variables with this because every surfboard is constructed differently, right? Depending on which factory it came from, depending on if it was, handmade versus machine production, depending on the materials. You have epoxy, you have wood surfboards, different types of resin. You have people that do poly, they do poly blanks and they'll glass it with epoxy resin. Some people do EPS blanks with epoxy resin. Like it's different combos, right? So it's tough to tell somebody exactly what to do
Hmm.
when everyone's going out with different constructions of boards, which is
Right.
why I would always recommend going to an expert.
All right. Sounds like I'm just gonna take my boards to you. And by the way, I got boards I gotta take to you.
Hey, let me know. Let me know. We're open.
I just got back from a trip and I definitely was a dumbass and dinged my boards. So okay, so let's talk about like biggest mistakes then. What should I do if my board like there's a ding and it's wet, but I want to get back in the water? What do you think about that? What should I do? Is it okay to ding a board if your foam is wet?
Wait, I'm sorry. You mean okay to surf it?
Yeah, so let's say I ding my board
Yeah,
and I didn't realize it. I've been surfing it for a while. I come out of the water, right? And my board obviously has taken on some water. What's your
right.
opinion? Can I just go ahead and repair the board right then and there because I
Oh
want to get
no.
it back in the ocean?
Not at all. No, you can't. You need dry foam. If your foam inside the board is wet, it needs to be completely dry before applying any resin, any filler, any putty, because the water inside the foam is going to prevent the resin or putty or whatever you put on it from bonding with the foam. The resin is not going to bond if the foam is wet.
Hmm,
So
interesting.
so I would say no, don't. I mean, the foam is already wet. I guess you could technically continue surfing it. However, more water is going to get inside and it's just going to it'll lead to more problems. So no, don't surf the board anymore. If you find the foam is wet, don't surf the board anymore. Try to let it dry out. Then, bring it to your local fiberglass expert.
Either that or like learn how to do it properly and then you can figure it out.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah.
Right.
One of
Okay.
the two. Well, when you say properly, it's like, getting the board watertight. I think anyone can do it for sure. The thing is when we start scaling up to sizable things, and I would say anything sizable is like, I don't know, 3 inches and up, the amount of sanding that you have to do requires a sander machine, whether it's an
Hmm.
orbital or whatever. You need a machine because the amount of sanding that you're about to be doing, your shoulder is going to be hurting. It's like you're going to be doing hours and hours and hours of sanding.
Hmm.
So obviously, yes, it can be done. Most people are not going to want to invest in a whole machine to do one repair, and
Right, right,
that's
right.
and that's why we have the services that we offer.
Right. Let's say you ding your board, you've been surfing it for a couple, whatever, you finish a session, you realize that, oh, you got a ding in it and it took on some water. Like, how long do you have to wait for it to dry? And like, how should I dry it?
That depends on how much water already got inside. If it hits your head and you got a ding, and you're in the water, you know exactly when it happened. It could dry out in as little as an hour. Just bring it out the water. It's tricky because if you got a ding in the board, if the fiberglass broke and you have water seeping in, but it's like a small hole, it can take longer to dry out because you don't have airflow. So something
Mm,
that something that we do in the shop that we do often, almost with every board, is we have to like essentially do more damage before we even start, right? We have to cut into the board, especially if it's wet. We might have to cut a larger area in order to allow airflow to let it properly dry out.
okay. That's a bummer. All right. So let's say,
It
so like,
sounds it sounds like you might have some things with water in it after your
dude, I
trip, man.
definitely do. I'm like, oh, I made all the mistakes.
Nah, you're chilling. You're chilling because we can dry him out. We can dry him out. Don't worry about
Oh
it.
man. Oh man.
Don't worry
Well,
about it.
yeah. Okay. So like, all right. So you gotta like, but to be careful, like how many days, let's say you got a ding, you don't know how long, you don't know when you got the ding, right? You
Right.
just like, oh crap, I got a ding in the board. And it's like like, would it be like a day if I just left it in the sun, more days, like how long would you leave it?
Well, yeah. If you don't know how long, you want to leave it until the foam at least is dry to the touch. If the
Mm.
foam is exposed, right? Sometimes the foam isn't exposed and
Yeah.
you don't know how wet it is.
Right.
But that's how I do it in the shop is I have to have the foam exposed if I think it's wet, and I'm letting it dry until it's dry to the touch. You know, so
Okay.
some people have moisture meters. I haven't invested in one of those yet,
Hmm.
but usually dry to the touch, like, when there's, you can look at your hand and there's no moisture coming out. That's usually good enough.
Got it. Okay. 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 And
So
then,
if you need a method for drying it out fast, obviously the hot sun works really well. What I've noticed is that if you have a dried paper towel or something very porous that sucks moisture, right? So paper towels are really good. You just tape that to the board, and whatever heat is on it, whether it's a space heater or a sun, it draws the moisture out
mm,
better because the moisture doesn't need to fully evaporate. It just gets sucked into the
mm.
dry material.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay. Man, I'm just thinking about this one. I got this like tiny pinprick ding
Yeah.
that there was like, there might have been water that got in, maybe not, like, but then I didn't fully like peel away the glass. So I don't know if the foam is dry or not. Okay. I guess we're
Right.
gonna have to see and
We
fix
have to cut it
it.
open and take a look.
Okay. And so here's the other question, right? So like people ding their boards, me included. Okay, I'll tell you about the other ding that I got on my board. I was so dumb. I put it on the motorcycle and the strap didn't fully secure it. So the
Oh,
board fell off the motorcycle while I was driving it, and it hit like the tail got a pretty big ding on it.
right.
Like, what is your opinion? Like, can dings to like right on the tail? That's where you're getting a lot of flex and all
Right.
that. I just use Sun Cure, so it sounds like number one, I should not just like let sun cure be that's not going to be a permanent fix, because what's going to happen eventually is going to break because it's not going to be able to flex, or what's going to happen.
Yeah, it also depends on how big that ding is, right? If it's a small chip in the tail, then you might be fine, right? Just doing it. The tail is a very sensitive part of the board where you need water flowing off essentially perfectly, right? Because if you have, you can feel when your fin is like even slightly,
Yeah.
bent or something like that, or if your edges or if your tail are rounded, you feel that because water isn't flowing properly. So if you have a glob of sun cure on your tail, especially where water is supposed to be flowing, the board is not going to surf properly. And you mentioned the flex; that's also a big part of it too. Where once the original fiberglass is broken, and you compromise that consistent line of flex, you create a point that's weaker. And
Yeah.
just like scoring glass, I tell people this all the time that come in with like little cracks across the whole board.
Yeah.
When you score glass and you apply pressure, that's where it's going to break.
Yeah.
So it's the same thing with surfboards because it's resin and fiberglass. If you have cracks, that's the weakest point.
Right. But let's say I do take it in and I get it repaired, is it going to be almost as good as new? I mean, during electric acid, Chloe dings one of his boards and he's like on the tail and he's like, "Oh no, I got skin cancer,"
Oh, tail cancer.
tail cancer, it's like, because a lot of times those repairs, because there's so much force being applied that the board doesn't ever like fully repair and it keeps on getting dinged. Or what's been your experience with it? Like, if you glass it, is it pretty much solid from then on, you can trust it, or is it gonna be an issue?
You can most definitely trust it. A lot of the times, after you repair a board, if you do it properly, you can absolutely trust it because the way that I'm going to repair it is the exact same way that it was constructed, right? So you have foam, and then you have your fiberglass, and then you have your hot coat, and then you sand it to shape. And if you repair it the exact same way with the correct resin, lapping all the glass properly around the rails, tucking everything, overlapping the same way it was built, then it'll absolutely perform the
Mm-hmm.
exact same.
Mm-hmm. Even for like, I mean, because I saw some of the clips on on your channel, like I saw like these delammed boards. Like, can you repair a delammed board properly?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, absolutely, and then yeah, it'll give it years and years of life in it
Hmm.
for sure. Yeah, so the key to doing it is like I said, you got to make it worse before it gets better. For delams, you have to take out the old foam that the glass got delaminated from. Usually, so for those that don't know, a delamination is when you get that bubble in your fiberglass, and there's an air pocket in between the glass and the foam, and you like press it and it's like bubbling, and that can absolutely be repaired, but you have to do some foam rebuilding work before you even glass it.
Mhm.
So it
But that
gets
doesn't.
technical. Yeah, and
y-
people, you gotta pay for that kind of work because it's not easy.
Right. So you have to rebuild the foam, and then you have to like get the the glass to like basically reattach to the foam. And so I'm assuming that you can like build it back so all that happens. But like number one, is it going to be solid? And then number two, is it going to be a little bit different from how the board used to ride? Flex pattern and all that kind of stuff. Or what do you think?
It shouldn't be different, and that's where it comes into play, where it's like the construction of the board, at least the way that I do things, is going to be the exact same way as the original builder of the board constructed it.
Yeah.
Now, there are certain cases where I would say the board will not feel the same. For example, when a board breaks in two pieces
Mm,
and we put it back together, it will not feel the same.
mm,
It might feel good, it might feel great. Some boards feel better. However, it will feel different because the consistency of flex in the foam is broken.
mm.
And
Okay.
to bring two halves of a board back together, we need to use resin. You can't bring two halves together with foam because it's not a strong enough bond to keep two big pieces together. If that makes any sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
Fairly
Yeah.
it gets fairly technical, but yeah, it's gonna feel different. The flex is not gonna be exactly the same. Will it be strong enough to surf? Yeah, for years, without a doubt. You'll have your favorite board back, you'll be sailing.
Right.
But for example, like if somebody got their brand new dark arts carbon board, snapped it in half, like a really high performance surfer, they're not gonna. A lot of them won't even bother to get it repaired because they know that flex that was built and ingrained in the board in the design is not going to be the same.
Right. I would also imagine it'd be really hard to get the rocker to like line up perfectly, right? Because you had two pieces that fit together. Like it'd be pretty hard to get them to like fit together exactly perfectly with the rocker like profile that it had before. I don't
we,
know.
we have our methods. It could get technical depending on how bad the break was, because if you have foam that's all mangled up,
Hmm.
then yeah, it's going to be difficult to get the rocker back. We have to do so much foam rebuilding before even trying to, or removing of foam before we even try to get the rocker back together. However, if it's a clean break, it's a lot easier to get the rocker back together. But we definitely have techniques for
Hmm.
realigning rocker and all that.
What about damage to fin boxes? I'm just going through all this because I feel like this would be useful for everybody to know. Because like when you ding your board, there's all these places that you can ding your board, and then there's always a question like, should I even bring it to the ding repair guy? Can he even
Yeah.
fix it? And
Should
like
you should you even bother? Like, is it worth it?
exactly. And the fin one, I think, is a big one, right? When you like hit a fin on a rock or whatever, and it's
Mhm.
like mangled, you're kind of like, this seems like beyond repair. But what's your opinion on that?
Yeah, fin boxes are a very common repair that we get, and fin boxes are absolutely repairable. Fin boxes, I would say, are is probably not the most repairable, but it's like that's something that can absolutely be repaired and brought back exactly the way it was, if not even stronger than it was before, because we have the measurements. The board is always the guide. The construction of the board is always the guide, and we reset boxes exactly the same. Use the measurements. If it's done properly, fin boxes are an easy one.
Hmm. Isn't it hard though to get like the concaves on the bottom to exactly be the same as what they were before? I guess it depends on how much like foam you got to cut out and all that, right?
It
But that
it
seems like the challenging part.
that sometimes is the challenging part. It depends on each board.
Yeah.
When it comes to concaves on the bottom, especially, it takes more time. It takes more time. Like, for example, a board with a double concave and that has a fin box set into the concave, we just have to do more depth checking on our routers,
Mm.
and before I'm routing into the box, I'm checking on a spare piece of foam, and going back and forth and going back and forth to make sure the depth is the right thing, because I can't even rely on the measurements on the fin box anymore, because
Yeah.
the measurements of the box are assuming that's on a flat surface,
Yep.
or relatively flat, a flat bottom, But when shapers put crazy concaves and channels into the board, now I essentially have to become a shaper and rebuild that.
Oh, interesting. Well, speaking of shaping, I want to touch on that. But before we get into like your experience shaping your first surfboard and subsequent boards, like, is there anything else you think people should know about ding repair? Just like if you're not a ding repair person, like, any other important tips if people are thinking about whether to repair their boards or whether they should try and figure out how to do ding repair themselves? What's any last thoughts on that?
I'm not sure. I think it's worth it for everyone to have a basic knowledge of the materials and of their own surfboards. So if for example, if you don't know whether your board is built with polyester resin or epoxy resin, then you should do a little bit of research to find out what your board is made of. I think that's worth knowing before even attempting to repair your own board. You need to know whether your board is epoxy, you need to know whether it's poly, because then you'll avoid making mistakes that could destroy your board, first of all. And you should know that. You should know the board that you're riding, you should know what it's made of.
All right, cool. Well, let's transition and talk about what was it like shaping your first board. I mean, you seem like you're a boards craftsman. You spend all this time like basically repairing boards. You're acting like a shaper. And how did your first board? What was it like shaping your first board, and how did it ride? How did it go?
I've been surfing only for 9 years, right? For me, that's a short amount of time. Some people be like, oh, almost 10 years, that's a long time. I still feel like a newbie in a way because I don't know, I tend to always have the mindset of the student. I always want to learn. I always feel like, I always want to be in a room full of people that are smarter than me. Now, once I started ding repair, there's a few things that I felt like I could never claim to be an expert unless I did those things. For me, I can never claim to be an expert unless I shape the board from start to finish, the entire thing. I can't claim to be an expert if I don't know how to polish surfboards, because a lot of surfboard repair guys worldwide don't polish their boards. If you have a gloss finish, they're not going to take it to that next level. So I had to shape my own board, and I had to learn how to polish and bring boards back, and I had to learn to color match. Now that I've learned, and I feel like I'm not even going to say I'm a master, but I've gotten all of those three skills to a very proficient level, I feel like I can call myself experienced in doing this type of work. Now, I shaped my first board last summer, and with the help of Adrian, one of my mentors from Barbados, the one I mentioned earlier, we got a blank from Jimmy O'Brien, another local Rockaway shaper. And yeah, I traded him some work for the blank, and we just went to town with it. I borrowed a friend's board, Ben Gibbs. He's an excellent shortboarder who lives here in Rockaway, and I borrowed his shortboard, traced the outline, and pretty much I was trying to do things right. We knew we were going to make mistakes. We did make a lot of mistakes, but I was trying to have fun with it because I didn't know if this was something I really wanted to do. I think it's important to make sure things are fun. So we made a 5/8 fish. I made a whole video on it. It's a lot of fun to ride. I actually don't hate the board. I still take it out every once in a while, which I think is a testament to, like, okay, it's not trash. Awesome. I can actually ride this thing. So yeah, that was my first experience shaping a board. I don't have it here with me. It's in another shipping container, but
Did the board turn out anything like you thought it would? Like, way
um
was it way better or way worse than what you thought you were going to create?
you know what? Turned out a lot different than I expected. I thought I was shaping like a hybrid shortboard, but I ended up shaping more of a fish, like with a thruster setup. And I didn't foil the rails properly, so it's a very thick. It has boxy rails, so we didn't take as much time to foil the rails as we should. And no, it didn't come out as I expected. If that but I think, but it's fun to ride. It's still fun to
Yeah,
ride. So I'm not mad at it. And it
yeah,
was the first board, so I'm okay with what it looks like. And a lot would have changed a lot of things. We dropped it. We put the fin boxes in the wrong place the first time, so we had to reroute holes and do all these things.
yeah.
But it was fun. It was fun. It took about 4 days from start to finish, and I'm thankful to have had help from both, yeah, Adrian and Jimmy O'Brien from right here. Jimmy is a Poem Surfcraft. He's an experienced local Rockaway shaper.
And well, like, what did you learn about surfboards from shaping your own surfboard? Like, did it give you a new appreciation for what goes into like making a surfboard, or like
Oh,
what was?
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I'll tell y'all right now, anybody who builds surfboards from start to finish, I mean, like, from dealing with the foam, the blank, like a blank, all the way till glassing and finishing, they're insane. Like like one person should not be doing all of that. It's crazy. It's crazy. It takes such a long time. It's such a different working process than ding repair. And I don't see myself shaping more than like two boards a year. Like it's really crazy. Every step of that process needs its own craftsman. That's what I would say. Like, That's why certain factories, they have a shaper, they have a glasser, they have a sander, they have a polisher. Like there's different hands that make a board. You know what I'm saying? Come to life.
Yeah.
And respectfully, they need their own disciplines because each of those is its own trade in itself.
Right. Yeah. I mean, like Ryan Lovelace is a guy that like does it all start to finish, but it's crazy. I mean, yeah, my understanding is like it's. I've also seen like Aaron and Drew and stuff making boards, and I'm just like, dude, that it looks like a lot of work. It's freaking hard,
So
and just
it's
like
a lot of
sanding
work.
your boards, so much work, right?
Yeah, sanding is ridiculous. Sanding is the most important thing in ding repair for sure. For shaping, it's a completely different process. I wouldn't even compare the two.
Yeah. So, what was it like though that first time you wrote it? Like, were you like just
Oh,
yeah? What was
I
that
was
like?
I was tripping out. I was definitely super stoked to like feel it, to catch waves on it. It was a mind, like I was like, "Oh yeah, this is about to be a journey," because to have put the curves in the board, to have drawn the outline, to have put the fins in a certain position and to feel the response from that, right? To stand up and to feel the mistakes
Hmm.
is crazy, cuz now I'm like, I know exactly what I would have done to make the board feel a whole lot better.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I'm like, okay, so this is where people go down the rabbit hole, and like now they're gonna make a second board to try and correct the mistakes and refine it, and that's how someone becomes a shaper, I guess.
Right. It just seems like such a rabbit hole. Like I can't imagine you're just going to be like constantly like, oh, I need to fix this. Oh, what if I tried
Yeah,
that? Like, it just seems like trouble to me, honestly.
yeah, and now I'm on my second board, second and a half. I'm working on two at the same time.
Uh-oh. What are you just doing a variation on this board, or are you like doing something completely different?
Completely different, because that board, the only template I had was the outline, and everything else we kind of made up. What I'm doing now is I have a favorite board of mine. It's a 6-6 egg, and I'm copying it. I'm trying to
Mm,
copy it exactly
yeah.
with the help of Andrew Zincola. He's a shaper. He does storyteller surfboards.
Yeah.
And gotta give credit where it's due. I'm like scared. I'm scared to touch the rails of the board. Like that right now they're square. I'm like, as much as I want to finish this thing, I'm gonna wait till he has time to come back and help me do these rails, because for me it's a confirmation, right? If I can copy a board and it feels the same, it says, okay, you did something right.
Yeah.
Now I know, okay, that's a way to do the rails, and that technique I can bring over to the next board I do. Made the way we did the concaves. Oh, that worked because I copied a board that I already know how it feels. When you make something new, it's a new feeling. If I'm copying a board that I already know close enough what the feeling should be, and I copy it and it feels like that, I'm like, oh, okay, now I know. It's a confirmation. Yeah, that's all.
Right. That definitely seems like the smart way of doing it. I know shapers as well, where they're just like winging it on every board, and I'm just like, I'm just like, how do you know what thing is going to be like, But
Yeah,
yeah, copying boards, and then like when you're learning to like play a new instrument or you want to write music, first you like copy and you just learn how to do the
yeah.
Beatles, and then after you know how to do the Beatles, then it's like, all right, now I'm going to start making my own songs, right? But you got to like learn the basics, learn the scales before you start improvising, and it is probably a very similar thing with shaping surfboards, right? So
Definitely. So far, yeah, and it's given me such an appreciation for the art, for the artistic aspect of it, because now I look at boards completely differently, and it's opening my mind to the fact that there's no real rules in surfing. That these shapers are making very calculated decisions based on experience. You could make a random decision and just see if it works. And it happens, right? You have boards that come up, and you have shapers that come out with crazy designs all the time and they work really well. But it just shows you how much of an art that is. And all these little changes that change the feeling, right? It all comes back to a feeling, which is ridiculous because every human being is different. We have different body shapes, different sizes. So the feeling is always going to be relative. Some people love twin fins, some people don't like them as much. So when you're talking about feelings, it's an art form for sure.
yeah, it's like this. That's what I think is so interesting. Is like this combination of like art, design, but then it's like you get this immediate feedback because you're like, it's like different from painting in a way. Like with painting, you're like, okay, I feel. Well, I guess with painting you feel it, and with the surfboard you feel it as well. But
Hmm.
there's this function aspect to it as well. It's like
Right.
I can either like, catch a wave on it or I can't. I can do a turn on this thing or I can't. Like you can make this drop it or I can't. And so it's like it's like that interplay between function and design and all of those things, which I think makes it super interesting.
So have you shaped your own board?
No, I know that if I start to, I know that it would just be too deep of a rabbit hole that I would never make it
Uh,
out of it. You know what I'm saying? I'd be like, oh my god, just the way I get obsessed with things, it would be like I'd be trying to do 50 boards a week or I'm
right,
obviously I'm
right.
joking, but
I
like
mean,
if
well,
yeah.
what if you had someone like side by side with you to guide you through the process?
Yeah, it's just such a. I'm leaving it to the experts. That's what I'm doing.
Okay, I respect it. I respect it. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I got yeah. I'm leaving that one to the experts. All right. Well, got so as a resident Rockaway surfer, I know that there's tons of people that listen to this. They're surfing inconsistent beach breaks. Maybe they're at Rockaway. Maybe they live in New York City or somewhere on the East Coast. You're in Europe. Okay, I thinking about lots of people that live around there. Kind of, what are your? I mean, as somebody that you're constantly charging some of the best waves in Rockaway. Like, what are your big tips for surfing cold, tricky beach breaks?
My best tips for surfing Rockaway is to find your own peak because it's a lot easier and it gives you more peace of mind to surf in a place where there's not a crowd, right? A few people is all right. Surf with your friends. Maybe don't surf alone, but don't also surf with a crowd. You got to find your in between because it affects your mental headspace when you're in the water, and it'll affect your confidence when you're going for waves. It'll affect with how you paddle around the lineup and how you feel going for many waves. Which, if you want to be good at surfing Rockaway, you need to go for a lot of waves because you need that repetition. It's a very steep and fast wave. I recommend definitely find a space where you can continuously practice where you have room to fail, you have room to mess up.
I love that tip. Because so many people, especially, I guess it's understandable though, but like they just go to wherever there's the most people. They're like, oh, there's a lot of people there. It must be a good wave. And then what happens
Yeah,
is it's so busy that they're just sitting all super wide on the shoulder and they're not getting anything. And I'm just like, you
exactly.
just go down the beach a little bit. You probably find something else.
Yeah, yeah. Even if the next peak is like half as good, you're gonna get the set waves, which are gonna be better than the waves you would have caught sitting on the shoulder at the main peak.
Yeah.
So it's always worth it to find your own spot. I went just a couple days ago. I was surfing 90th. It was super crowded, and I wasn't getting great waves. I was getting waves, but I was like, man, if I just go to the next jetty, I'll get the set waves, which will be a little bit better than the leftovers at 90th. So I just paddled the jetty over, and that exact thing happened. I was catching
Mm.
all the set waves, and it was great.
Yeah. It's so funny though, the way our brains work. Like I know this, but still I just like I see the set waves at a certain spot. I'm like, oh, I gotta surf there.
Yeah,
It
yeah,
can be so hard to like, to walk away. When you see a pumping perfect wave, you're like, oh, I want that thing. So, you
that's
just get
true.
lured over there. You get lured over there. But you're right. That's a really good reminder.
It's true. It's
Um,
true.
anything else? Like what about equipment wise?
Oh, so equipment for Rockaway, this is very tricky, right? Because you want to know what's the best board to ride in Rockaway Beach, right? The tricky thing is that first of all, there's no one size fits all. There's no rules to surfing because most likely you can ride any board depending on your skill level. What board is best for the conditions? That's another question because our waves in Rockaway are different than like other beach breaks. They're different than New Jersey. They're different than in Long Beach right there, 30 minutes over. So in Long Beach, you might be able to ride a high performance shortboard, whereas in Rockaway, you might still need a high volume shortboard like a groveler or something like that. Not because of volume, but because the shape of the wave is different. So while Long Beach might have like hollower, steeper, maybe A-frame waves, Rockaway has really fast down the line waves, almost walled up. You can call it closeouts if you want, where you need to get in the wave quickly and you need to also race down the line quickly. It's not so much top to bottom like how you might find in a Long Beach A-frame, or you might not find like a long walled out point break, maybe like in Montauk. So the type
You
of
mean
board.
like, I mean, I find Long Beach is usually softer unless it's like properly bombing and then, then it gets steep. Do you mean,
Okay.
or but yeah, everybody's different. Maybe we might be also surfing different beach breaks over in Long Beach. So
Right. Maybe,
yeah,
shoot. I've maybe that is possible. Long Beach is pretty big, so there are a lot of
yeah.
different spots there also.
Well, I'm guessing you probably head over to Long Beach when Rockaway's maxed out, and so then it's like proper. That's
No,
probably what's going on.
not
No?
always, not
Yeah.
always, but there's definitely really like there's almost like perfect. There's like really good waves.
Yeah.
When the waves are on, it's on, and then you can go and find a really
Right.
good peak. But I don't know. That's just in my experience,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah. But you like more volume in Rockaway. You like more volume in Rockaway.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. I feel like in Rockaway, and like I said, from my experience,
Yeah.
like you, as soon as the waves get over 3 foot, you almost want to step up board to get into the waves to fight current and to make it down the line. Like there's hardly great conditions to ride a high performance shortboard in Rockaway.
Yeah.
And then when it's under 3 foot, then it's like it's almost like mush, and then you need a mid length or a long board to have a great time, or a groveler board.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I totally agree. It's like
It's very tricky, man. It's very tricky.
yeah, it's like either it's like tiny crappy waves or it's like pumping barrels. Like
Yeah,
there's yeah.
it goes 0 to 100 real quick.
Yep, for sure. That is definitely one of the tricky
Then you're
things.
out there fighting for your life, wishing you had a step up.
Exactly. Um, well, so to that end, like um, what's your opinion on paddle fitness? Like, how important is it at a wave like Rockaway?
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I know y'all doing this because you got the paddle trainers. But paddle fitness is like utmost importance. It's important. It's important anywhere you surf. But where we live, especially, it's even more important than in surf destinations. Because if you
Right,
go to Mexico or Costa Rica, you can get in the water and paddle every day. You can surf.
right,
Here, you can't get in the water every day. One, there's not waves. Two, the weather isn't always conducive to going out and just paddling. Three, swimming pools. It's not the easiest to access swimming pools. Maybe you don't want to pay for a whole gym membership to just swim, so
yeah,
it's very tough to stay in shape, especially in the wintertime when it's cold and there's we have flat spells here. It's of utmost importance because when you get out there and you're gassed and the waves are really good, and then now your session is only 45 minutes because you haven't surfed in the past 3 months.
yeah.
you
Well,
know
that was the interesting thing, because there have actually been a bunch of people in Rockaway that have bought the paddle trainer, and I was like, why would you need the paddle trainer if you live right at the beach? But it's like,
ah
nah, I don't want to get in the water. It's too
Exactly.
cold.
It's
Yeah,
cold, yeah. I mean, I think surfers are responding really well to the paddle trainer. A lot of us understand that this is something that has been needed for a long time. Like, yo, I need to work out. But if I go to the gym, I'm not even sure. I don't usually see equipment that can like work out the same muscles as surfing. They have certain like pulling machines, but it doesn't do it. I haven't seen anything that does it,
right.
you
Wait,
know.
so just asking you, like, do you ever struggle with paddling?
Absolutely. I struggle with paddling mostly in the wintertime
Yeah,
when I'm not spending much time outdoors. I'm not skating, I'm not surfing, I'm not active in general. So my general cardio level is down.
yeah,
And on top of that, if I'm not surfing, my paddle fitness is down. And in wintertime when the waves pop up and it's pumping coming out of nowhere, there's good waves. I get really tired. It's hard to fight the current. I don't have a lot of fun and I end up going home sad.
that's interesting because, like, you have long arms, you have big hands, and I'm just like, dude, you look like you're built to paddle, and you swam in high school, right? We
And
were
I swam
talking
in high
about this.
school, yeah. I swam
Yeah,
competitively.
yeah. So you're one of those people where I'd imagine you would never struggle, but and you live at Rockaway, so you'd be like, all right, I'm just gonna jump in the ocean and paddle around, but you're like, nah, I'm too busy for that.
Yeah, no, no.
It's too cold. Interesting. Well, so then how, because we had you training with it a little bit, you got to try it a little bit. What was your experience using it? How did it feel?
So a couple of people, right? Because people saw the video on my page, they hit me up and they were like, "Yo," so they asked me the same question: How does it feel? How does it actually feel? Right? Because they're like people are trying to decide whether to buy it or not. And I've been telling people the same thing. It works. It works out the muscles that you need it to work out. You don't have the buoyancy. You don't have this like rocking side to side that happens on a surfboard. So no, it doesn't exactly feel like surfing or like paddling on a surfboard, but it works out the muscles that you're gonna need to. And most people are like, "Oh shoot, that's a really good thing to know," because I don't know. I guess they're just looking for someone who had firsthand experience using it.
Yeah, for sure. No, I mean that's what it's designed for, right? It's gonna, of course, nothing is gonna really properly feel like you're paddling on a surfboard, right? But like it'll train your core in the way that you need to train your core in order to like paddle, sit on a surfboard and paddle for a long extended period of time. It's going to train all your paddling muscles the same way it would if you were going to need it, but like it's not going to feel exactly like water, right? So
Yeah,
that's there's no way you're going to perfectly simulate it, but I think it gets the job done. And I'm glad to hear that you think that it probably does do that, just in terms of getting your paddle fitness up. So
yeah,
nice. All right, so I got a couple closing questions. We got to work towards closing this up.
sure thing.
Um, all right, have you ever had any light bulb moments when it comes to technique?
Absolutely. Most of my light bulb moments happened in my beginning years of surfing. I would say like the first or second year of surfing, where I started to figure out how to move with the surfboard in the water. The number one light bulb technique came from my friend Chris Pachoki, the Rockaway Beach lifeguard. And this was when I was first starting to surf, and I was paddling into waves and just going straight towards the beach. And I was wondering why I was nose diving so much, why I couldn't pop up. And I'm trying to shortboard. Let me make that clear. I'm trying to shortboard. I wasn't riding longboards that much. And the number one tip was to, while I'm paddling in, angle your nose 45 degrees while paddling in the direction that you want to go. And he said that, and I did it instantly and was popping up and going down the line
Yeah.
right away, like right away. I was like, wow, a tip, a tip. It was
Right.
literally light bulb moment right there. Like that literally works. Paddle sideways and then stand up, like paddle into the wave going sideways, like at a 45-degree angle in the direction of the wave. If you're going left, you aim left 45 degrees and you take off like you go down the line.
Nice. Yeah, yeah, I love that. I think probably one of the most common mistakes is people don't take enough angle. They think they're taking angle, but they're still not taking angle.
Right.
All right. What about light bulb moments when it comes to boards or fins?
Oh, that's an interesting one. I'm not sure. Oh yeah, I got one for sure. I think a light bulb moment went off for me maybe 4 years ago now, where when I started riding mid lengths, and I was never exclusive to any particular board shape or size, but when I started riding mid length boards, I realized that surfing could be a lot more fun than it is challenging. I've also ridden longboards, and I found that personally my sweet spot is like somewhere between a mid length and a shortboard, because you have boards that can paddle really well. They're short enough to turn, they're thin enough to duck dive, that essentially work in almost any conditions imaginable.
Yeah.
And that was my like light bulb moment. And I think maybe that can translate to the viewers, is that you need to find a board that works for you the majority of the time. You shouldn't, obviously every surfer is going to eventually build a quiver and have a certain board for each type of conditions, but you want to optimize your fun, your wave catching ability. So finding the right board is sometimes key to having a good time.
Yeah, and what's your magic mini mid length
My
slash big
magic
surfboard
mini
shortboard?
mid length. So I'm 6 foot. I weigh about 175 pounds, and my magic board is a 6'6" egg shape, and it's a twin fin with a pintail. And so when I say egg shape, that means a lot of the volume is up front. So it has a rounded, not a rounded nose, but it has more volume up front. It has a wider nose, and it comes down to a pintail. It's a twin fin, so it's loose enough to turn, and it comes in at 35 liters. So it's thin enough, 2.5 inches thick. Also, it's thin enough that I can duck dive, that I can bury the rail, really lean hard on it on turns. And I also use it kind of like as a step up board when the waves are pumping. It gets in really early, holds the line. It's the perfect board for me.
Nice. And what's the model? What's the make?
It's
Who
it's
shaped
a
it?
it's a custom solid surf bachelor model.
Bachelor. All right.
Yeah,
Getting the waves with the Bachelor. All right.
yeah. I would say that too. Like if you're a new surfer, or if you've been surfing for a few years, don't be afraid to experiment with custom boards, because the bachelor model, traditionally the 6'6" is very thick. it probably wouldn't even be fun for me to ride. But I rode the stock model and went and ordered it custom because I wanted a thinner version of that same board.
Mm,
So sometimes it takes an experienced surfer to know those things, because you think, oh, just because a board is the way it is, that's the way it is. But when you an experienced surfer can see like, oh, that outline is dope, but maybe the tail could be a little more pulled in, and then I could really whip this thing around. Like, that I feel like that's more in a conversation for advanced surfers, but ordering custom boards definitely has been a thing for me since I started, and it helps you talking with shapers, talking with experienced people, helps you make informed decisions.
yeah. No, I'm a big fan of like thinner boards, for sure, especially in that size when you get a little bit longer, because it just allows you to engage that rail, you know.
Yeah.
So and you can just apply leverage so much easier versus like a big chick, thick, chunky board. I totally agree. Um, all right. What's your intention when you go for a surf?
Oh, that probably changes every time I go out because recently the waves have been small, but they've been fun. My intention has been to just have a good time. The homies have been in the lineup. That one time I mentioned where I paddled to the next jetty, my intention was just to have fun. I wasn't like trying to get the best wave. I just I just knew that if I paddled over to the next jetty, I would have more fun because there'd be less people there.
Yeah.
So when the waves are pumping, my intention might be to pull into as many barrels as possible and try to make it out of a barrel. You know, if the waves are really like fast and they're walled up, my intention might be to like, okay, I'm gonna bring the right board and actually try to do airs today to try and get that feeling. Or I might be like, okay, it's just a really good day. Let me try to do turns and cutbacks and things.
Okay. And last question here. If you had to surf the same wave for the rest of your life, what would it be? You don't
Oh
have to name any
wow.
secret spots. No secret spots, but what would it be?
That I have surfed or like that I've seen.
That you've surfed or that you've seen? One either.
Man, I don't know. I don't even know. I think part of the magic of surfing is trying new waves.
Yeah, for sure.
I think a wave that I really want to surf is like G land in Indonesia.
Mm,
Like I'm goofy foot, so I like going left. So I think one of my dreams would be to go to Indonesia and surf waves like that, like perfect
yeah,
left-handers that just go.
that sounds like a dream.
Yeah, but I also love beach breaks. I'm like, I really want to go to the Outer Banks, North Carolina, and
Yeah,
surf those. I love beach breaks because I grew up, I didn't grow up surfing
right.
here, but I learned to surf here. So
You didn't
yeah,
pick Rockaway.
yeah. I didn't pick Rockaway. Nah, I've been here the whole time.
Yeah.
I grew up skateboarding, so I was already
Right.
drawn to action sports, and
Right. Right.
and yeah, beach breaks just like took took a hold of me, I guess.
For sure. All right, man. Well, that was super fun. Thanks for joining. And we learned a ton.
Thanks for having me. Yeah, this was fun. This was fun for sure.
All right, man. Okay. I'll talk to you later.